Doncaster Rovers have done it!
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the CHALL, your Doncaster Rovers fan. Now, there's no Rovers in this chat because we're speaking all about technical directors and that whole role, especially since, Rovers announced yesterday a new head of football operations role. And we're talking to someone today who knows a lot about being a technical director. He's been at clubs such as Huddersfield and Ostersunds. He's also been at clubs in other roles such as Spurs and Millwall and Southampton. We're here with David Webb today. David, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, mate. And I guess we'll start off with the Tottenham Academy sort of youth manager's job, 10 plus years ago. Looking back, football was a different place, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was very different back then. I mean, there's a lot more now in terms of analytics. There's a lot more research out there. There's a lot more sports science. The game's evolved a lot more. There's a lot more access where players become interactive through sort of media and track their own performances, as well as having sort of the helpful aid to coaches and stuff like that. So it has really moved on, in my opinion, for the better, because they're more helpful aids, and there's more live information now that we can sort of bring the players and staff and keep them updated immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you've worked at Spurs previously in a different role as well, just a few years back. How closely in that role did you work with Mauricio Pochettino?
Yeah, so my role at Tottenham then, I originally met Poch at Southampton previously, but I was in a kind of a smaller role then, sort of 16s to under 21s recruitment. Then I went on to Bournemouth in sort of a head of recruitment first team role. And then was lucky enough to sort of reignite back with Poch, sort of that 2015 season. So, yeah, it was a very good relationship, because Poch is someone who I understood how he worked. I understood sort of his playing philosophy. I understood Tottenham as a club, and it was my role to sort of bring in the players sort of integrated within that first team setup. So probably the best potential young players in the world from 17s to 21s, but had the capacity to be in the first team environment, and also help bring through some homegrown players as well. So Poch was very easy to work with, both from a professional perspective and from a human perspective, because I understood his playing philosophies, but also as a person, he's a really humble, great guy.
Yeah, and in terms of the players that you were recruiting, who would you say was the best sort of examples of your time at Spurs? Who was the best people that you sort of recruited?
Yeah, so I say that most of the work we've done was always as a team effort, but from sort of my remit, I could help with players like Song, because my previous experience at Bayer Leverkusen, Dele Alli, Kieran Trippier, Troy Parrott. So those are just sort of some of the names that I was personally involved in terms of the recruitment process, doing the work, due diligence, but I'd say it's more collective team effort. But it was how we highlighted those players. I think when you're recruiting to a club such as Tottenham or any high level club, you have to understand the processes and the environments and the head coach and the academy, and understand all the alignment as well. So then it helps understand how you recruit into that club.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, a few years back, for about a year, you spent a year as technical director of Ostersunds. How different was Ostersunds compared to English football, and how did it feel looking back on that time at Ostersunds?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Ostersunds. I think it was a great life experience for me in terms of the culture, the people. Very different to English football in terms of the levels. Obviously, the Premier League and the Championship and the league surrounding highly physical, highly competitive. Very skillful in terms of, the Swedish leagues. They have it was a lot slower. There was still a lot of quality within sort of like certain teams. They've got a very good youth system, so a lot of the top young players, unfortunately, don't even get to play in the Allsvenskan because they're cherry picked to go to the big giants in Europe quite young, between 15 and 17. But The good thing about Sweden is you can recruit, because of the policies, you can recruit anywhere. So you can recruit from homegrown Scandinavian players, but you can also go further afield into sort of like African and Asian players as well. So, and there was no sort of restrictions or visa issues on that as much as sort of you got in England. So you could recruit different types of talent, which was good. In terms of the club itself, it was a very sort of nice club, very humble. It was my first role as technical director, so it was very different to my previous role at Tottenham, where we had unlimited resources, had sort of outstanding training ground, new ground being built. Where Ostersunds was, it was quite a small club, but it was very competitive in the Allsvenskan. It had good success previously with Graham Potter. They managed to win sort of the Swedish Cup and get into Europe, and a good success. But they had, it was a nice, humble environment, and the understanding was for me just to work alongside the head coach, was to sort of help build some departments and focus on recruitment. So, yeah, it was from an English coach working abroad, it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah, I bet it was. And obviously, your most recent job was technical director at Huddersfield. When you stepped into Huddersfield, how did it sort of feel from the off, from the first day you were there?
Yeah, completely different, because it kind of happened so quick. Where Huddersfield came to an agreement with Ostersunds to buy me out of my contract, because they wanted me to start quite quickly, because there was a lot of stuff going on at Huddersfield at the time. They've just unfortunately been relegated from Premier League to the Championship. They was under new ownership, going through that transition as well. And they was obviously thinking about changing a new coach. So with that comes a whole range of things where you've got to think about changing the philosophies, you've got to think about changing the environment. It's just completely different to what they had before. So for the first couple of months, I would say it's a bit of a whirlwind, because there were so many elements to the role. My first task was to help them appoint a manager and a head coach that sort of fitted the values and the philosophy of what they wanted to take forward. Then I didn't have an effect on that summer transfer window because of the time I came in. So the real impact was probably in the January transfer window. So also we had players there that wanted to move on, that didn't want to play in the Championship, wanted to see their career back in the Premier League or elsewhere. And it was just a new exciting time for the club, because we managed to integrate a lot of young players. That was part of the new philosophy. And it was just to stabilise in the first year, essentially, in the Championship, and to keep, then to look to rebuild over sort of a 2-3 year period, which they're doing now with that philosophy, and then to try and go back up to the Premier League, but do it in the right way rather than trying to instant success and buy it back up. It was all about stabilising the club, getting to know what was going on, getting to know the new values, new philosophy. This is what we're trying to do. Everyone's together on this journey. And it was a 2-3 year plan rather than a quick fix.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking back then, since you've left Huddersfield, how do you feel about the impact that you've made over those couple of years at Huddersfield?
Yeah, I would say I'd like to think about a positive impact, definitely helping them in their new journey in which they wanted to do. And it's really pleasing to see them doing so well now, especially with the style of football they're playing, especially with their integration of young players. They're doing it the way they set out to do, which is good. They haven't chopped, they've stuck with it, even though they didn't have a good season last season. This season's been very good. And that just shows a good continuation of staying with their philosophies and their process. So it's it was good to know that, I was the first cog in the wheel, part of that journey, to help them. To help that stabilisation and rebuild, and long may it continue for them. They're in a fantastic position around the playoff spot. So, yeah, it's really pleasing to see.
Absolutely. And looking ahead, then, obviously, if you have applied for any new jobs, we don't want to reveal that at this stage. But looking ahead, what's next for you? Do you want to go into more technical director jobs? Do you want to push on and do more than technical director in the next job? What are you sort of looking towards in the future?
Yeah, so for me, I'm open to sort of two possibilities, and I think this is kind of my thinking of, when I spoke to sort of a couple of my mentors within the game, still very much on the sporting director piece in terms of, and for me, it's all about the project rather than the sort of badge on the club. And feel if I can feel that my values and the way I am will bring, certain success and values to that club, but also potentially at the right club, maybe as a head coach or a manager with that sort of technical experience behind me, which is probably more of a European philosophy where the head coach and technical directors can fluctuate between roles, where I think in England it's kind of seen as you're either one or the other. So yeah, I was whichever the right project is for me, depending on which role. As I say, I'm open to both, and it is about the club. It's not about I want to just do this. It is about what the club would need. If they were looking more of a sporting director and that fit me, great. If it was more of a head coach with I can help them build long term, then great as well. So yeah, those are the sort of two areas I'm sort of focusing on at the moment and seeing what materialises over the next sort of couple of months or so.
Absolutely. And finally then, I know there's going to be a lot of Rovers fans and a lot of other fans from other clubs asking, since you're a former technical director, and since we're getting ahead of football operations soon, what's the secret to a good technical director or head of football? What's the secret to bringing success to that role and bringing success to the club?
I think alignment is one of the main ones. So for a technical director, it's really forward thinking of sort of Donny Rovers to have that in place, because that, says to me that they're looking at the long-term vision of the club by having a sort of head of football in place, and alignment with the head coach and the football staff, and also with the management, the CEO, and working above. And it's trying to build that one system, one philosophy, one environment. So if head coaches change, if staff change, if players change, that you've got your set philosophy in place. And if there is turnover or change for any reason whatsoever, then you can replace it with staff or players that can automatically sort of keep the wheel turning. So having that alignment, having a clear vision and structure from the off, and then also having the guts to see it through, because obviously when you go through this stage, there's going to be up and down moments, but if you stick with it over long term, it can prove very fruitful for you guys.
Absolutely. David, thank you very, very much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it.
No problem at all.
And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you do like, comment, subscribe for more. And for now, I'm the CHALL, your Doncaster Rovers fan. Goodbye.
For to top it!